All right, so I'm going to do an introductory video on how to start the process of MIG welding. And the first thing we're going to do is pick what you're going to weld. So in this case, I'm going to use an example of this tubing. And the thickness of this tubing you can determine with a gauge. And we keep this gauge in the computer cabinet over here for the CNC plasma cutter. So if you need a gauge, you can get a gauge and measure the thickness of your material. In this case, it is 14 gauge. So if we were going to weld this to something else, we could use 14 gauge as the thickness of the metal. So when we come to the machine, the first thing we want to do is turn on the gas. In a full tank, the gas is under high pressure, so we want to turn it on slowly and gradually so that it doesn't bang into the gauge. Okay? And then ideally, when we turn it on, the gauges would be away from you so that if anything blew apart, or it would not fly into you. Okay? So this is the main valve. Once you open it, you've got to open it all the way tight. Right? Then the next is to turn on the machine, which is in the back upper right. Okay? And turn on the machine. In the front, you'll see the digital lights come on. Once this is on, you can now adjust the flow of your gas. And the way you do that is you have to pull out your torch or your gun. You're going to pull the trigger, and when you pull the trigger, it's going to let gas come through, and you can measure it here. So as I pull this trigger like this, you're going to get a flow, okay? And so it's only after you pull the trigger that you can really adjust the flow accurately, right? So that's about 20. So that's a good place to start when you're indoors.
20 CFH.
Cubic feet per hour, I guess it is. Right? Okay, so the machine is on, and now this is the top of the line MIG welding equipment, which automates most of your choices. So you just have to tell it what your variables are. What type of metal you're welding, how thick it is, what type of wire you're using, and what type of gas you're using, and it will set everything else for you. So if you start on the left, this is called the processes. This machine is a multi-process machine, so it will do MIG welding, TIG welding, and stick welding. Here at the Roundhouse, we're really only using this for MIG welding. So you're going to choose MIG welding, and then it also asks what type of gas. And we only use C25 gas, which is 25% carbon dioxide and 75% argon. So this should always be MIG welding, steel, C25. Okay? Which it's not right now, it's MIG stainless. So I would put this down to steel C25 MIG. Okay? And then you move over on this to figure out, okay, here's the size of wire you have. Our standard wire is 030.
That's the stuff.
That's this wire here. Unfortunately, depending upon whether you're feeding from the top or the bottom, the tag that tells you the size of the wire, unfortunately, is on the inside. So you can't see it. So you don't know unless you took it off, but it's 030. So we're going to do 030 for our wire. If you go up here, you could change this to different sizes of wire. 024, 030, 035, and that's as high as it goes. So we're 030. And then the thickness of your material. So we were 14 gauge, remember when we measured it? So that's 16, 18, 14. So that's what you would do for 14. Okay? And then it's automatically going to set your voltage and your wire feed speed as a best standard to go from. And now the other thing to keep an eye on here is that these, if I turn these dials, this is volts and this is wire feed speed. As I turn this dial, you can see it allows you to come off that standard if you want to. But in general, you want to be on the standard, which is the target, right? So if it's like that, that's not really what the machine feels to be the standard. Okay? So that would be your standard settings right there.
And it's possible that it is off then.
If the automatic is off, then you're totally on your own doing voltage and wire feed speed, which you won't be knowledgeable of until you're a little more advanced in the beginning.
Cool.
Okay, so that's our, that's how you turn everything on. The polarity is very important, but shouldn't be adjusted. But this polarity goes to the torch, and this polarity goes to your ground clamp. So the ground clamp, remember in MIG welding, we're doing reverse polarity, which means the gun is positive and the ground is negative. So that's how these should be. You can't, you can change these, but they would be inappropriate.
And you attach that to the table?
Attach that to the table.
Great.
Okay, provided that your piece touches the table. Okay. If I put this on a piece of wood and put it up here, then you won't get connected. So I think that's it. And do you want me to do to turn it off?
Yeah, we'll do a different video.
Okay.